Drugs and Addiction, an Anarchist Perspective, Dickie Dredd. And we're still on Chapter 1, the drug war in the mind, and this is part 6 of the video recordings, which is part 4 in the book, The Internal Enforcer. Every empire eventually moves indoors. You don't need guards on every corner once a citizen has swallowed the law. Michael Foucault called it the internalisation of discipline, the point where power becomes self-policing. I didn't read him as a kid, but I lived his theory. My mum's temper was my first government. Her moods swung like weather fronts. I learnt to read the forecast. To survive, I developed a sixth sense of authority. Tone, posture, silence, anger, all decoded like scripture. By the time I left home, the sensors ran on autopilot. No one needed to punish me anymore. I'd taken over the job. The voice in my head, the one whispering, "Careful, don't, not enough," was the perfect civil servant. Efficient, joyless and tireless. Drink and speed could drown it out for a night, and that felt like victory. But by morning it was back with new evidence. Guilt was its preferred language, and I spoke it fluently. Alan Carr's observation that fear keeps addiction alive applies here too. Not just fear of withdrawal, but fear of failure, exposure, of daring to exist without clearance. Craving is simply the body keeping that fear in circulation. Marte later put it plainly. The addict's fiercest enemy isn't the substance, but the unrelenting inner critic. That learned early to mistake approval for love. That was me. I could outperform, create, argue, dance, but never quite cross the invisible line into enough. The drugs didn't cause that wound. They gave it tempo. The high was a truce with the tribunal in my skull. Ronald Lang once wrote that madness might be a sane response to an insane world. Addiction isn't far off that. When you're raised to believe obedience equals safety, intoxication becomes protest. But even rebellion can get conscripted if you're not careful. I might have rejected authority outside, but inside I still heard its voice. The state might have outlawed certain chemicals. I'd outlaw my own pleasure. That's the real genius of propaganda. It trains you to confuse your oppressor's voice with your conscience. My internal police wore many uniforms. My parents' disapproval, a teacher's sarcasm, social worker's clipboard, a copper's torch. They didn't need warrants. They lived rent-free in my head. Every time I laughed too loud or stayed up too long, they took notes. Shame did the paperwork. Anarchism starts with naming that voice and stripping it of rank. Inside a free person, thought should run like a federation, not a dictatorship. No single voice, not fear, not hunger, not guilt, gets to rule unopposed. Once I stopped obeying and started listening, something shifted. The cravings turned into messages. You're tired, you're lonely, you're scared of stillness. Once translated, they lost their power. Healing isn't about muting the noise, it's about recognising who's speaking. Foucault might call it resistance, Marte might call it compassion. I call it eviction. You don't kill the cop in your head, you hand him a redundancy notice, wish him luck, and remind him that the revolution's already happened. Outside, the state still builds its towers of fear, but inside the walls can crumble in a heartbeat once you realise the lock was imaginary all along. Next up, still carrying on with Chapter 1, we've got Part 5, which is medicine or management.